Y'all, I am Hope at Crafty Hope, and welcome to my channel. I'm so glad you joined me today. I am working on Index Card a Day. This is cards 13, 14, and 15, and y'all, let me tell you, these first two especially are two of my favorite cards I've ever done. So yeah, I'm really excited to be sharing these with you. If you don't know about Index Card a Day, I encourage you to head over and check out Tammy Garcia. Her site is Daisy Yellow Art. I will have some links about her below. In addition, my friend Nina Fickett does Mixed Media ICAD. Both Tammy and Nina offer up prompts, daily prompts. Tammy also has weekly themes, and sometimes I use the prompts and sometimes I don't. And in this first one, Tammy's prompt is Lost and Found, and Nina's prompt is Canvas. So I'm kind of using the Lost and Found one here because I recently found that folder that said collage bits on it, and it has lots of yummy things in it. So it's kind of a lost and found thing, basically more found. That thing wasn't lost, I just happened to find it. So I started by pulling out some really interesting things in there, and included was this piece. Y'all, it's some newspaper I had used underneath something I spray painted. So that's just enamel spray paint, probably Rust-Oleum brand, that, as you saw, I crinkled it up and then used some fluid matte medium to glue it onto my card. I am using some heavy duty cards that I found at Walmart, so they're a little bit thicker than your typical index cards you can find nowadays. So this paper, this gold newspaper, had a really neat effect to it. So it's also kind of like I found that it did something new. So anyway, once I got that gold paper down, I'm taking some of the other little paper elements I found in there and sticking them down. This is a bit of an old handwritten letter. There's what else am I going to pull out there? I'm not sure what I'm doing there, y'all. When I crinkled up that gold paper, it kind of shed a little bit, had these gold sparkles in it. So I was trying to keep them wrangled because I was like, oh, well, those are fun. And y'all, I don't even know where those are anymore. So from there, I am, let's see, that is some drywall joint tape, I think is what it's called, and it's like a paper tape. It's a sticker basically with holes in it. I've already used it on several of my iCads, and it is just really yummy. So I'm sticking it down onto the card. Just, it gives a bit of added texture. I think it's a lot of fun. And what I'm using to spread there, y'all, is it's from the cosmetic aisle at the Dollar Tree. It's for spreading face masks. Yeah. Okay, so I've got this little piece of stitched paper there, along with a bit of a like book spine paper, like the stuff that peels off when you take a book apart, and those will work primarily into this, and I'm going to move them around a whole lot. I think I've cut out quite a bit of some of that moving around, in fact. And I decided I really wanted to bring something dark into this. So I grabbed a handcraft stamp, and y'all, this is just a big oval shape. I wanted something dark and that would make a statement. I'm using Black Soot Distress ink, as well as, I think that may also be Black Soot distress powder, embossing powder. I'm not positive. I just wanted some black embossing powder. And so I put that embossing powder on to the card, shook off the excess, and of course I'm getting rid of everything else. I make sure always to move my jar of embossing powder far, far away, because the next thing I'm going to do is, and I loved how that ink didn't get down in the holes, so the powder didn't get down in the holes. So then I begin to heat my embossing powder, and if you know embossing powder, you know that it kind of melts and gets tends to get glossy. Because this is the distress one, it's not going to get super glossy, but I forgot that, and I kind of kept heating this, trying to wait for it to get glossy. And in doing that, I noticed that that newsprint with the gold on it started kind of buckling and bubbling and doing this weird textural thing. You see me, I'm kind of looking at it, and I really liked it. So I'm going back over and heating it again, trying to get it to get more of that technique. Um, there I am, yeah, I'm showing you some of those bubbles that kind of came up from the heating of it. It's really, there was one big one I kind of pushed back down, but yeah, anyway, there's me trying to heat some of those black spots again, thinking that I didn't get it embossed, I don't know, melted enough. But again, I forgot that I was using a distress embossing powder, so it's not going to get shiny like some of the other ones. That's just, yeah. Okay, so here's me futzing with that. I cut that out of me futzing some more. Then I started looking for a focal, and I futzed with all kinds. You see the photos over there on the left. I messed around with those. We ended up pulling out some Tim Holtz paper dolls and found this guy that's kind of sitting, and immediately could see him sitting on those strips that I had there. So I was like, oh, well, that's kind of fun. That's what I'm going to use. So I decided to go ahead and ink up my card again with that black soot, kind of going matchy matchy there. And I'm using that ink blender going around the outside of it. I think I'm also, yeah, I'm going to ink. This is with walnut stain distress ink there. You can see I've got the gray one and the black candled one. That's how I determine which is which. So I put walnut stain on that little piece of stitched paper. I'm looking at my guy, playing with him. I turned the card thinking, oh, maybe I had turned it upside down at some point, I guess, while I was heating things. And I was like, wait, that's not how that goes. And there, I'm laying him back there. And I really like him kind of sitting there. I will tell you, and there I'm inking him as well with that walnut ink, walnut stain distress ink. Oh my gosh. In the end, he begins to start to look to me, and I said this in my Instagram post, like one of those construction workers from the 30s that built this, like the Empire State Building and the skyscrapers that, oh my gosh, he looked like he's just kind of dangling there dangerously, and I thought that was super cool. I felt like I needed something more here, so I messed with that, thread there thinking it would be super neat to do, and I was like, no, just start gluing this down. So I pulled out the Fabri-Tac, but I've been having trouble getting it to go down that big bottle. Next time I'm getting a smaller bottle so that it doesn't take as long. So I tried using this Nuvo adhesive, and I did that for just the stitched paper, but I realized I wanted something that would be a little more hefty and dry better, faster, or whatever. So I am going to use the Fabri-Tac for that book spine piece because it is kind of thick and chunky, and I was afraid that as good as that craft adhesive is from Nuvo, it's not that I don't trust it. It just doesn't dry as quick as I would like, I think is the thing. So there is me sticking down that book spine, and it adds so much texture. And of course this card here, y'all, has so much texture to it. But I really think it's the gold in the background that gets me, that I'm just absolutely smitten with. So since that guy has got to sit there and that book spine is raised, I decided to bring in some foam, little foam squares. I think the ones I've pulled out here are tiny ones. I think they're from the Dollar Tree. But because they are small and he's one of the smaller paper dolls, I thought that would be good. So I'm using the whole pad there to see how, like, if it's thick enough to raise him or if I need to, like, double up anything. And I was like, look, I just need to raise him a little bit. Stop futzing. Just stick stuff down. So I do cut down a couple of them to get his feet and I think his head to, oh, maybe it was just his feet. Okay. because they're going to be below the sit line and they're going to need some support too. Yeah, and I keep futzing. Now these are great. I like that I can stick them on, and the backs or one side of them still has a I don't know, a cover on it. What do you call it? It's not adhesive yet because you haven't peeled it off. So you can kind of test that out for a little bit. And that's exactly what I do. Yep, there go my hands, which is like, oh my gosh, just do it, Hope. Do you ever do that? Do you talk to yourself like that? Like, come on, stop it. Just make that decision. So I'm going to stick him down. And once I do, I'm going to start looking for a cinema. Of course, I'm going to futz with this. I don't like seeing the foam. Oh, I was so worried there when I dropped him. Oh, I'll look for sentiment. And like I said, he felt like one of those people dangling from a skyscraper. So I found in my Tim Holtz metallics the word fearless, and that seemed kind of perfect. So I'm going to stick it over on the other side of that stitched paper. I will put some Oohoo on it to make sure it sticks well. And that'll be it for card number 13. I love it. I'd love to know what you think. I'm going to give you a quick look at it, but there'll be more pictures at the end. All right, let's get to day 14. The two prompts for day 14 of ICAD are recipe and sandpaper, and I am going to use both of those. So you can see I've pulled out yet another index card. I picked up years ago. It was probably one of the first estate sales I ever went to. Picked up a box full of handwritten recipe cards, and y'all, it was a steal. I paid like $2 for the box, for the cards, for everything. It's what sold me, I think, on estate sales, though I did feel a little bit oh my gosh, gut wrenched that it was somebody that had died and had these things that nobody wanted and had to be sold. It was, it was my first time at an estate sale. I didn't look at it yet about the way it gives some of those items a new life and a new opportunity instead of going to a landfill. So anyway, this is a recipe. It was for panned oysters. It's got something written on there that I'm going to point out. I don't even remember what it was now that it says, but I don't know what it said there. I used my matte gel medium to stick the recipe card to my index card because I knew I was going to try something like this, which is taking some sandpaper and sanding off bits of it. Now, I do this for a couple of reasons. It gives it an age effect, but it also gives it some texture because if I add any kind of inks or fluid mediums to it, it's going to soak in differently in those sanded areas than it will in the regular exposed areas. Does that make sense? It's like more raw, so it'll soak in a bit more. So as you can see, I'm sanding it in a couple areas. I think I even sanded through in that upper right corner there. And this is some really cheap sandpaper, so I'm going through it pretty quickly. You saw that one piece I just kind of threw it off to the side of my desk. I did decide to go ahead and sand the edges too, just for the fun of it. It's, give it an even more aged feel. Now, like I said, this card, much like the previous one, I really, really love. But it was a lot of steps. It was a lot of things to get there. So, like I said, wet media of some kind will soak into this differently once you've sanded it. And my go-to I really love how instant coffee does on different things. Somehow it reacts differently than inks and things do. So yep, that's what I'm using. Instant coffee there. It dries up in that little yogurt cup and then I reconstitute it with water. So I kind of put it on those areas I sanded as well as splattered a bit, and I'm going to dry this. And then this is some Prima Marketing clear gesso that I am going to spread over the top of this because I know that, oh, y'all look at that brush. Oh my gosh. Because I know that coffee will reactivate if I put some other media on it. And I didn't want it to smear too much, but it does. The color of that coffee does change a little bit when I put that clear gesso on. So, yeah, but I also want to preserve that recipe card in the back a bit. So Once I got that dry, I'm going to scribble a bit just to add a little bit of movement on my card. It's one of those things I love to do. Sometimes I feel like I'm doing the same scribbles every time, but for me, it's just kind of a background texture thing. And since I did lose some of that really yummy coffee color that I like, I am coming back in with another layer of this. Now, I have found with this instant coffee that you can layer it on top of each other and it to get like a darker effect to it. And I like that. I think that's cool. All right, so I did look at that for a bit and decided since it is a woman's handwriting and, a woman's recipe, it needed something feminine. And I love, y'all, everything I put this Tim Holtz stencil on. It's a smaller stencil. And I cannot remember what it's called because it came with I think it came with stamps or something, or maybe it was three. It was three of them at the time when I bought them. But I'm using some homemade texture paste. You could use whatever. You have a molding paste or whatever. This is, what is it? It's plaster of Paris and gesso and a little bit of spackle. Is what I've put in there until it's at the consistency that I like. So I'm putting it down. I put it down. You can see in two spots. I decided I needed a third. So I'm going to pick another spot. I have a baby wipe that I'm trying to clean up any of the stuff that goes over the edge of the stencil. Like I said, it is tiny. So working on it is kind of small. And I really didn't like how, right there, it felt really squared up there. And I didn't like that blunt line. So as you can see, I used my baby wipe to wipe it away. I walked away and let that dry for a while, y'all. It doesn't take long with that, but I did give it a minute to dry. While it dried, I picked out a couple things, including looking through my Tim Holtz botanicals and finding this gorgeous rose image. The botanicals are kind of shiny, so I'm going to use that sandpaper to push it back a little. If you don't like using the sandpaper on something like that, you could use your matte medium over the top of it, and it would also push back that shine. I have seen Mike Deacon use his matte gel with a sponge technique, dabbing it with an ink blender like that to give it more of a matte effect. So I did ink the edges of that with my walnut stain distress ink, and I off camera while I was waiting patiently somewhat for that texture paste to dry, I picked out an embroidery floss that matches that peachy pink color of the roses, and I'm gonna do some stitching. So I put a good length that's a really good length. But what I had decided I wanted to do was basically mark making in the background of this. I initially had wanted to use a paint pen to make these marks, but I found I did not have the color that I wanted to put on there. So I was like, well, I suppose I could mix something up, but I have all this embroidery floss and that would add more texture. So that's what I'm going to do. Now, y'all, I have sped this up a whole lot. This is 8 times speed because I wanted you to be able to see me make these stitches, but I'm just doing little up and down single stitches, and every once in a while I stop and I'll put my botanical down to kind of see where it's gonna lay or where I plan for it to lay, so I don't put stitches where I don't need them, basically. So, and I'm working my way around looking at it, and I love this. I don't know why I don't do this on everything. Sometimes I feel like I should just throw the same things over and over again on these cards. I don't know. I tend to. I tend to have a formula, I feel sometimes, about how I go about making these cards. And I wonder sometimes if I tried to use some of the same, things every time. If I said, okay, collage first and then stamp something and then put a Tim Holtz product down and then a sentiment and maybe some buttons. How different would it be every time? But yeah, I feel like if it works, why mess with it too much? So okay, so I finished that stitching. I am sorry that was so super fast, but it just, yeah. it was the same thing over and over. And I wanted you to see it, but I didn't feel that, I don't know, it's not riveting content by any means. All right, so I am looking at that. I'm going to go ahead and ink up the edges of this also with that walnut stain distress ink. I may have to, and which matches pretty well with the coffee color. So that worked well. I felt like I didn't have anything, I don't know, I needed something dark or black or something on it, just a touch of something, a little bitty itty bit of something. So I decided to do some splatter with a Sharpie water-based paint marker. But first I want to cover up my my textured roses or flowers because I didn't want a whole lot getting on them for some reason. I wanted to keep the whiteness of them as much as I could. So as you can see, I primed that and I'm just slinging it at the card. But what I end up doing, I take these pieces off. Do you see? I think I even used a piece of the sandpaper to cover it up. But where I primed it, there was a little bit of extra paint, so I am going to pick some of that up to get a couple of the smaller areas. I'm using that super tiny brush to really get some tiny splatters on there. All right, probably, yep, gonna try this. And then pick out a sentiment, and I found one that says, I believe in you. So the sentiment pack I'm using there is something I picked up at Tuesday Morning ever and ever and ever and ever ago. And I was looking for something that had that same peachy pink color on it, and these did. So that's the only reason I used this sticker pack or even picked out this sticker. It just felt the most right. And again, I'm inking the edges of it. I'll probably use my Oohoo glue stick to stick it down. And the last thing I'm trying to stick. Well, nope. Yeah, I need that Oohoo. So I'm going to put that on there. And I'm saving putting down that flower for last because I had a feeling that I was going to do the same thing I had done with the card before, which is use the foam, sticky back foam stuff to stick it down. Okay, right. I'm pulling out, that is a rollerball R2 pen from the Dollar Tree. I have found that if you hit it with a little bit of water, it will bleed a little bit, at least if you do it pretty quickly. So I underlined that word, that sentiment real quick and activated it just to give it a bit of shadow so that it would also have more shadow, the same way that making this botanical pop up is going to have like an actual shadow. So that makes sense. Everything needs a shadow. All right, so I'm putting down those bits of piggyback foam, and then I will peel it up and stick my botanical down, and I will be done with card number 14. We'll move on to card 15 here in just a second. Again, I will give you a look at this super quick, but there will be more pictures of this at the end. All right, so this is card 15, and these two prompts are terrazzo and book paper. You can see I've got the book paper right there. Going to start with that. I do not use terrazzo. Y'all, I didn't even go look up what terrazzo means. I think is it some kind of tile or something? I hear terrazzo and I think tile. Am I thinking of the wrong thing? So I didn't even know what it meant. I wasn't feeling like delving into something too hard. I knew book paper was going to be super easy. So I am using that prompt, but I disregard the other one entirely. Now you can see in that upper right corner, y'all, I'm sorry about that. That is the edge of my phone. I was trying to record some of this to maybe do a reel, or I may have even been trying to record a vlog. I ended up not posting any of it. It just it was too many things. So I'm sorry if that little spot of something in that upper right is going to bother you. At some point in this video, I think I end up taking it down because I think I got frustrated with this card. Now, I did say that cards 13 and 14 are two of my favorites. This one is a great card. It's a beautiful card. There's nothing absolutely wrong with it. It just, to me, it doesn't feel as much like me as the first two do. It doesn't capture my heart the way the first two did. So, y'all saw I used my fluid matte medium to put down the book paper, and then I'm going straight in with some craft acrylic paint. This is, I think the color is Midnight Blue, and I have watered it down a whole lot, kind of a watercolory effect. Just getting it on the card, smearing it a little bit with my card. You see, messing with my phone. Sorry. Oh, I finally dry that, and then I'm going to trim off the excess from around the card now that I've got all that dry. And then I decide to take those excess bits of book paper and use I think I'm going to use my Oohoo glue stick to glue those pieces down on the card. Because they've already got that blue on there. I'm probably not going to use them in anything else, so might as well go ahead and use them, as much book paper as I can. This didn't really do anything to the card. It just allowed me to use up some of those things that are sitting there on my desk. That's all it is. Let's see. So I am trying to clean up a little bit. Y'all, I'm such a mess. My desk currently is pretty ridiculous. So it's always a bit of a mess. And I apologize for that. I know that a lot of people who do videos on YouTube come in with a beautifully clean, perfect desk. But y'all, you know that's not their real life, right? They are putting, I don't know, I know that's not my life. I just can't have a clean desk every day. It's not going to happen. That's not how my creative brain works. So, props up to them for having that kind of stamina and ability to clean their desk and have it spotless every day. All right, so I decided to come in. This makes no effect at all. This is some speckled egg distress oxide and one of my hand-carved eraser stamps. That stamp kind of looks like an eyeball. I don't know what I was doing. I was trying to get some texture on there, and you can see it in a couple spots. I thought it was pretty neat. Yeah, I don't know. From there, I picked out a spray. This is a Tattered Angels. It's in orange. And of course, it's not spraying. It kind of, look, you see, I'm just shaking the bottle at my card and it's coming out. So, and I think that's some kind of chalkboard paint or something. Again, it's something I believe I bought at Tuesday Morning that you can't, maybe, can you still get Tattered Angels sprays? I don't know. How annoyed are you that I kept messing with my phone? I'm pretty annoyed by it, so I apologize. I can only imagine that it's bothering you. I did spray some water on that to move that orange around a bit. And in the end, the orange doesn't really show through on the card, but it's there. I know it's there. You see it's there. And, because I already had color on here, I'm going to add a bunch more. This is Americana Margarita. Yeah, it's Americana Craft Paint Margarita. I love the color. It just, I don't know. I'm coming to realize more and more that I really like subtle and neutral colors in my work, or just blue and brown. Y'all, I can't go wrong with a blue and brown. That's what makes me happy. So I think that's why this card doesn't feel as much like me, even though I really do like the card. Yeah. So I'm putting little bits of this paint down, trying to water it up, and then use my brayer to move it around. It didn't do a great job, but it was something. And now I'm coming in with more embossing. So this time I'm using another hand carved stamp that has these layered ovals on it, more of the black soot distress ink, and I'm going all the way across my card with this. And I'm using a different embossing powder this time. It is also black, but it is not the distress embossing powder, I believe, because it actually gets shiny. I think I consciously made that decision when I went to pick it out. I was like, let's try a different one and see if we can get it shiny. So I'm shaking off the excess. I do have a little bit that I think gathered where something was still wet. It's not, I'm not going to let it bother me. So I'm dumping out the excess again, moving that jar out of the way, and I will heat this. Now, I'm not going to show you the whole heating process of this, but with this one, you kind of heat it so you can see it gets shiny, and that's how you know that it is melted and embossed. I used that same distress ink and black soot to go around the edges with just the ink pad, and then I'm activating it with some water on a wet paintbrush to get it to kind of smear out. Something a little different for me on the edges. Hey, I didn't just use the ink blender. And then I clipped out a bunch. I went through that box of focals looking for anything that might work. And I found this picture of this little guy and was like, oh, he would go great with these blues and greens. So I'm going to use him. But I'm going to tell you, I struggled a whole ton with finding a sentiment that would work with him. And I had to have a sentiment because that's just how I finish a card. But he is a baby, but he looks like a ruffian. I had the hardest time with him. So I did rough him up a little. I even tore him a little too much and ended up having to tape the back of him because, yeah, right there. Oh no. So I will use some masking tape. It's tape up the back. Of course, I inked him up to give him a little more age but it looks like it was the walnut stained distress ink. And yeah, I really wanted this to feel super vintagey. So, and I guess I did that. It's, I'm realizing now what I probably should have done, but didn't. And then I went into my bucket of scrap fabrics, tore down a piece of rust dyed fabric of some kind. It went well with that orange that's kind of still there, not greatly. And decided I'm going to just put it across the card. And then I reached back into the bucket and pulled out some, I believe, coffee dyed. Oh, wait, first I'm going to rough up that photo some more because it's not banged up enough, obviously. I think the corners were bothering me. Yeah. So I reach back in that bucket and pull out some, I think it's coffee dyed cheesecloth. My goodness. And I'm cutting it just the tiniest piece down, y'all, to put on that corner. I don't know why. I get that corner was talking smack to me. I don't know. It's like, cover it up. You just push him back there. But I think it also helped integrate that little bit of gauzy, helped integrate the photo into that orange fabric there. Yeah, so it didn't feel so stark on there. So I used my glue stick to tack down that bit of rust dyed fabric as well as the photo here. I'm even gonna put the Uhu straight onto that corner. Well, first glue it down, but I think I'm going to use it to put on the corner I'm dabbing it at that to stick down that gauze. And then I will grab some thread that's on my desk. Yeah, and I think I'm going to skip ahead and get it on a needle because it took me a while to find a needle to put it on. And I'm going to make little X's over the fabric, over that gauze, over the rust-dyed fabric. When I said the fabric, the picture, the gauze, the fabric, and just make little X's. And again, I'm going to speed this up here in just a second, but I'm going to let you see these first one or so. I like to pre-punch my holes, especially when it's something so exact like an X, so that I get them kind of centered. And in this case, I was going through the fabric, the photo, the gauze, the card, all of that. So pre-punching really helped. And I think, no, it wasn't this card that I did it. One of the cards coming up, I forgot whether I was going in or out and ended up going like around the card, but this isn't it. So I am speeding this up again so that, you don't have to watch the monotony of me like thinking, where am I going to put the next stitch? Y'all, the way I futz with these cards, it's like they are, I don't know, they are mini works of art for me. I really enjoy them. I do often, I've been turning my iCads into greeting cards that I have at Hello Gallery in downtown Fairhope. They're a fun little work of art that you can gift to somebody else. So, and that was the owner suggested I do those. She saw my cards and was like, "You should make greeting cards with those," and I have. And yeah, otherwise they'd be just sitting in my stash. So there's something you can do with your iCads. I know people have asked me for years what I do with them, and I wasn't doing anything with them, but I have made a bunch of them into cards since then. So. I did pull out my Tim Holtz label stickers there and found the sentiment full of wonder, which, y'all, that was the best I could do with this little dude, who was, yeah, that little ruffian of a little guy. And I'm going to add a couple more stitches on here just to integrate where the placement of that I ended up putting that sticker. And that'll be it, I'm pretty sure, for this card. And this set of them, 13, 14, and 15. I'd love to know which of these three is your favorite. I don't know that I can pick between 13 and 14, but let me know if 15 is your favorite. I'd love to know. I like hearing what you like. It's important to me. Okay, guys, if you like this, you know what to do. Make sure to check back later for more of whatever crafty shenanigans I get into, and I will see y'all then. Thanks for watching. Bye.